The slap echoed so loudly it killed the music. 300 guests froze mid-toast as the bride, Ashley, snapped her hand across the face of a 64-year-old black server named Ruth, sending her stumbling into a table of crystal glasses. Champagne splashed across the marble floor. The room went dead silent. Ashley didn't even look shocked. She looked offended. "Are you serious?" she hissed. "You people can't handle one simple tray?" Ruth steadied herself, one hand on the table, the other covering the growing red mark on her cheek. She stood tall, even as humiliation burned in her eyes. Her uniform was spotless, her posture graceful, an elderly woman who had spent her whole life serving others with dignity. But Ashley wasn't finished. "You ruined my wedding photos. Get her out of here." Guests stared, unsure if they had just witnessed a joke or a crime. Phones wavered in hands, unsure to record or not. A few whispered, "Did she really just hit her?" While others kept their eyes down, pretending nothing happened. Up on the staircase, the groom, Ethan, stood frozen. The man everyone praised as calm, successful, and composed suddenly felt the world tilt. His breath caught when Ruth finally looked up and their eyes met. Her eyes weren't angry. They were hurting. And Ethan understood instantly. This wasn't just a server. This wasn't just an accident. This wasn't something he could ignore. Because the woman Ashley slapped was the same woman who raised him. The woman who worked 3 jobs to give him a future. The woman he called Mom. A tremor of rage moved across Ethan's jawline. The ballroom lights reflected sharply off the staircase railing as he stepped down, slowly, deliberately, each footstep heavier than the last. Ashley still hadn't realized what she'd done. Not yet, but everyone else soon would. If this already made your blood boil, hit like and subscribe right now. Because stories like this are still happening, and the world needs to hear them. Ruth sat quietly in the service hallway, the noise of the ballroom muffled behind thick doors. She dabbed the swelling on her cheek with a cold towel, her breath steady even as her hands trembled. She had learned long ago that dignity was the only armor some black women ever got in this world. Tonight, that armor had been tested. Ruth had worked events for decades, weddings, fundraisers, galas for people who would never remember her name. But she never cared about that. Her pride came from knowing she gave every job her best. Tonight was supposed to be simple. Serve drinks, smile, stay invisible. But the past has a way of refusing invisibility. 25 years earlier, Ruth found a frightened, skinny 8-year-old boy sitting alone outside a community shelter. His clothes were soaked from the rain. His eyes were deep, sad, searching. His name was Ethan. She took him home that night, fed him hot soup, washed his clothes, and tucked him onto her worn-out couch. One night became many. Many became forever. She never had children of her own, but Ethan filled that silent space in her life. She became mother, teacher, nurse, provider. She worked sunrise to midnight, office cleaning, cafe shifts, hospital laundry, doing everything just to keep him in school and off the streets. Ethan never forgot any of it, but Ashley had never understood any of it. Ruth sensed Ashley's nature from the moment they met. The dismissive glances, the half-smiles, the way she spoke to staff like they were beneath her. Ruth had seen that type before. People who believed money made them superior. People who believed black women existed only to serve them. When Ethan announced he was marrying Ashley, Ruth stayed quiet. He was in love, hopeful. She didn't want to break his heart with her concerns. But she had prayed, silently, that Ashley would grow mature, soften. Tonight made it clear she never had. Inside the ballroom, guests were still whispering. Some justified the slap as an accident. Others exchanged uneasy looks, wondering why the bride reacted with so much venom. A few slipped away toward the bar, avoiding the tension. Meanwhile, Ethan pushed through the crowd, his eyes locked on the service hallway. He remembered every night his mother worked herself to exhaustion, every sacrifice, every tear. And now she stood in that cold hallway, injured and humiliated, on the happiest day of his life. That happiness was gone. Something heavier had taken its place. Ethan stepped into the hallway and found Ruth sitting on a folding chair, one hand holding the ice pack, the other resting in her lap. She straightened as soon as she saw him, trying to smile through the pain. "Baby, don't worry about me," she whispered. But Ethan saw everything. The swelling, the humiliation, the quiet strength she always carried. He knelt beside her. "Mom, look at me. Who did this?" She hesitated, still trying to protect him the way she always had. "I'm fine, Ethan. It was just a moment. Let it go." But he couldn't let it go. Not this time. Inside the ballroom, Ashley was laughing with her bridesmaids as if nothing had happened. She took sips of champagne, bragging loudly about how professionalism doesn't exist anymore, and how she refused to let incompetent people ruin her big day. Her friends nodded along, their laughter sharp and cold. Ethan listened from the doorway, unseen, his blood heated with every word. "She acted like she owned the place," Ashley complained. "These workers always do. I swear, sometimes you have to teach them a lesson." Ethan's best man, Logan, stood nearby, overhearing everything. He shot Ethan a look, half warning, half sympathy. Logan knew Ethan's history. He knew who raised him. He knew this moment was a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Ashley continued, lowering her voice but not enough. "And honestly, she should feel lucky. I didn't hit her harder." The room went even quieter around her. A couple guests exchanged uneasy glances. One woman whispered, "That's going a bit far," but Ashley ignored it. "Anyway," Ashley said, brushing off, "the important thing is my dress is fine." The photographer retouched the stains already. Crisis averted. Crisis? To her, that was the crisis, not the woman she assaulted. Ethan stepped forward slightly, watching as Ashley posed for another photo. She didn't see him, but he saw everything. The entitlement, the fake smile, the complete lack of remorse. This was the woman he planned to build a life with, and she had just revealed who she truly was. Ruth's quiet voice echoed in his mind. "Let it go." But Ethan couldn't. He knew his mother endured decades of disrespect from people like Ashley. He knew she never fought back, not because she was weak, but because she believed in kindness. But today proved something. Kindness alone wouldn't protect her. Ethan turned to Logan. "Stay close," he said. "I need proof of everything she's saying." Logan nodded without question. The groom walked back into the ballroom, not as a man celebrating his wedding, but as a son preparing to uncover the truth in front of everyone. Ashley had no idea her downfall had already begun. If this happened right in front of you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want justice as much as I do, hit subscribe. Ethan moved through the ballroom with calm, controlled steps. Too calm for a groom who just watched his mother get slapped. Logan followed him, phone already set to record. He didn't need instructions. He knew exactly what Ethan intended. Ashley stood near the dessert table, still surrounded by her friends. She tossed her hair back dramatically, complaining about the lighting and the staff and the food, as if the entire night revolved around her comfort. Ethan approached slowly, and one of Ashley's bridesmaids nudged her. "Your husband's coming," she whispered. Ashley turned, ready to put on her sweet smile. "There you are. I've been waiting. Walk with me," Ethan said, voice soft but firm. Ashley blinked. "Right now? We still have photos now," he repeated. Her friends exchanged looks, but said nothing as Ashley followed Ethan toward a quieter corner near the window. Logan blended into a nearby group, angling the phone discreetly. Ethan didn't waste time. "I want you to tell me exactly what happened with the server." Ashley sighed dramatically. "Ethan, not this again. She bumped into me. She stained my dress. I reacted. End of story." "You slapped her?" "So?" "She wasn't careful." Ashley crossed her arms. "People like that need discipline. If they can't handle basic work, they shouldn't be here." Ethan's jaw clenched. "People like that? You know what I mean." She rolled her eyes. "Those older workers. Those service types. They never know their place." Ethan felt the temperature around him drop. "Her place," he repeated. "Yes," Ashley said, annoyed he didn't understand. "They aren't equal to us, Ethan. They're here to serve. That's their role. Someone has to remind them sometimes. Honestly, I barely touched her. She's lucky I didn't say more. A sharp silence followed. Ashley, misreading his expression, softened her tone. Baby, listen, I did you a favor. You don't want people like her messing up your perfect wedding. Logan's phone captured every word. Ethan stared at the woman he thought he loved, realizing that the mask he'd been looking through for 2 years had finally come off. She wasn't just entitled. She wasn't just rude. She was the embodiment of everything Ruth had suffered her whole life. He exhaled slowly. Thank you, he said. For what? Ashley smiled. For showing me exactly who you are. Her smile faltered. Ethan turned away, already knowing the next steps. Tonight would not end the way Ashley imagined. It would end with the truth, played out in front of everyone she hoped to impress. Ethan stepped onto the small stage where the band had finished their last set. The microphone was still on. He adjusted it with steady hands, the room buzzing softly as guests turned toward him, expecting a romantic speech or a thank you toast. Ashley stood near the center of the ballroom, fixing her hair, preparing to smile for whatever sentimental words she assumed were coming. Instead, Ethan's voice broke through the room. Thank you all for being here, he began. Tonight was meant to be the happiest night of my life. A night about love, family, and unity. He paused, scanning the crowd. But something happened earlier that I cannot ignore. A ripple of confusion swept through the guests. Ashley stiffened, her smile frozen. Ethan continued. A member of the staff, an elderly woman, was assaulted and humiliated by someone who believed her life had less value. A few guests exchanged uneasy looks. They remembered the slap. They remembered the silence. Ashley stepped forward. Ethan, honey, let's not do this right now. He raised a hand gently, stopping her without even looking her way. That woman, Ethan said, voice deepening, is not just a server. She is the person who raised me, the person who sacrificed everything so I could stand here today. Gasps broke across the room. Ashley's face drained of color. Her name is Ruth, Ethan said. She found me when I was a child who had no one. She took me into her home. She gave me a life. And tonight, on my wedding night, she was struck across the face by someone who believed she was beneath them. A shocked murmur exploded in the room. Ashley stepped closer, shaking. Ethan, this is a misunderstanding. He finally looked at her, eyes cold. A misunderstanding? He pulled out Logan's phone. Let's let your own words explain. He tapped play. Ashley's voice filled the ballroom speakers, clear and sharp. People like that need discipline. They never know their place. She's lucky I didn't hit her harder. They aren't equal to us, Ethan. They're here to serve. The room erupted. A woman gasped loudly. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Others stepped back from Ashley as if she were contagious. Ashley's father covered his face with his hands. Ashley lunged toward Ethan. Turn it off. Someone turn it off. But the damage was done. Every word had echoed through crystal chandeliers and marble walls. Every guest had heard the truth. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. For 2 years, he said, I believed I was marrying someone with kindness, someone with empathy. Tonight, you showed me who you really are. Ashley's tears came fast. Ethan, please, this isn't fair. I was stressed, she spilled. You hit a 64-year-old woman, he said quietly. You hit my mother. Silence. Absolute, crushing silence. Guests lowered their heads. A few walked toward the exits, disgusted. Couples whispered, knowing this video would go viral by morning. Ashley reached for Ethan's hand, desperate. We can fix this, she pleaded. We can talk. Just, please. He pulled his hand away. There's nothing to fix, Ethan said. The truth is out, and everyone here deserves to know exactly who stood beside me at the altar today. Ashley collapsed into a chair, shaking, surrounded by stares that burned hotter than any spotlight. The wedding was over, but the consequences had only just begun. Security escorted Ashley to a side hallway while guests whispered and filmed every second. The luxurious ballroom, once filled with applause and champagne, now carried the thick tension of judgment. Not a single person defended her. not one step forward to soften the blow. Her own bridesmaids stood frozen, unsure if they should stay near her or distance themselves to save their own reputations. Ethan watched quietly as the room emptied in waves. No shouting, no dramatic outbursts. Just a heavy silence of people seeing a side of Ashley they could never unsee. Logan handed Ethan the phone. "Everything's saved," he said. "Crystal clear audio." Ethan nodded. "Good. I want this documented legally." Down the hallway, Ashley tried to gather herself. Her mascara streaked across her cheeks, her hands shaking. "Ethan, please, listen to me. This can't be happening. Think about our future." He stepped closer, calm, steady, certain. "There is no future." Her breath hitched. "You can't just throw everything away because of one mistake." "One mistake." Ethan's voice dropped. "You assaulted her. You degraded her. And then you bragged about it." Ashley grabbed his arm, desperate. "I was stressed. The day was overwhelming. You know how I get. It wasn't who I am." "It's exactly who you are," he said. She let go, defeated. Ethan handed her a white envelope. "This is the annulment paperwork. Signed and ready." Ashley stared at it as if it were a death sentence. "Annulment? Ethan, please, my sponsors, my career, everything is tied to this wedding. If this gets out," "It already has," he said. "My friend streamed it privately to every news outlet in our contact list. They'll release it tonight." Ashley's knees weakened. You wouldn't ruin me like that." "You ruined yourself," Ethan replied. "I'm just making sure the world sees it clearly." Meanwhile, Ruth sat quietly in the staff lounge, unaware of the full storm unfolding. A few servers brought her water, offering gentle words and comfort. For once, she was the one being cared for. Outside, phones buzzed rapidly. Notifications popped up everywhere. A leaked headline appeared. "Bride assaults elderly black woman at wedding. Groom reveals she's his mother." Ashley covered her mouth as she saw it appear across guest screens. Oh, God. "Oh, God, no." Sponsors began emailing within minutes. Contracts terminated. Partnerships withdrawn. Public statements drafted. She had lost everything before the night even ended. Ethan walked toward his mother, leaving Ashley behind without a final glance. The consequences had reached her faster than she ever imagined, and this time she couldn't slap her way out of them. Justice had begun its work. Ethan found Ruth sitting alone near the back exit, her hands folded in her lap, her posture calm but tired. The faint bruise on her cheek stood out under the soft hallway lights. When she saw him, she offered the same gentle smile that had carried him through his entire childhood. "Are you all right, baby?" she asked. He sank into the chair beside her, taking her hands in his. "I'm so sorry, Mom. You didn't deserve any of this. Not tonight. Not ever." Ruth shook her head softly. "You don't owe me an apology. None of this was your fault." But Ethan couldn't accept that. "I should have known. I should have listened to the signs. I let someone like her stand beside me at the altar." His voice cracked. "I failed you." Ruth reached up, touching his cheek with the same tenderness she used when he was a child afraid of the dark. "You didn't fail me," she whispered. "You stood up for me. That's all a mother could ever want." He closed his eyes, letting the moment settle. The chaos, the humiliation, the exposure, it all faded for a brief second. All that remained was the bond between them, stronger than anything the night had tried to break. Later, as staff cleared the remnants of the wedding, Ethan and Ruth walked out together. The cool night air met them with silence, a silence far more peaceful than the ballroom's heavy tension. Across town, Ashley sat alone in a hotel room provided by her parents, scrolling through thousands of comments condemning her actions. The video was everywhere, news outlets, social media, blogs. Her life had changed in a single night, and for once, there was no one else to blame. Meanwhile, Ruth returned home with Ethan. She made tea, just as she used to after long work shifts. The familiar ritual calmed them both. "You know," Ruth said, handing him a cup, "life has a way of revealing people's true colors at the right time." Ethan nodded. "I just wish it didn't happen today." "Better today," she said, Then 20 years from now, with children watching, he exhaled deeply, realizing she was right. The wedding was gone. The plans were gone. But something far more important remained intact: his mother's dignity and the truth. Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You're my family," he said. "Always." Ruth leaned into him, peaceful. "And you're mine." The night ended not with celebration, but with clarity, proof that love and respect outlast any ceremony. If you believe this should never happen again, share this now. And to my USA, UK, and Canadian viewers, your voice is power. Use it.